Hello friends, Elvis Blanco here with the InternHub team. In this small tutorial, I would like to walk you through the process of setting up your own InternHub instance on your production servers. We're going to be using Ubuntu Server 2304, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is install all the necessary software for our application to work. So following the installation instructions in our repository, we can go to the prepare your server section and let's go ahead and execute this first section where it says install all the necessary dependencies. What this will install is Composer, which is the PHP package manager, npm, which is the Node.js package manager, Git. We're also gonna install unzip to unzip some files. We're gonna install curl. We're gonna also download and install nginx, which is gonna be our web server, and we're gonna install MySQL, the MySQL database server, and the MySQL PHP connector. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this. I'm gonna paste it here on my server. I'm also gonna delete these 3 lines and the 3 ones at the beginning as well. And we're gonna go ahead and install all this. This is gonna probably take a few minutes. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pause the video after I start installing. And I'll see you guys in a couple of minutes. Okay, so now that all of our packages are installed in the computer, we can go ahead and move forward to the next step. But before we do that, keep this in mind. In some hosting providers, you might find that the web server ports are not enabled by default. You might want to go ahead and look into the details for your specific hosting provider. But for my hosting provider, which is Volter, I'm running Ubuntu server again. These ports are by default blocked, so we have to actually unblock them. To do that, I'm gonna use the uncomplicated firewall tool from Ubuntu, and the ports that I need to open are the port 80, which is the HTTP connection port, and I also have to enable port 443, which is the port that is gonna allow us to do secure connections and all the HTTPS connectivity to the web server. So to do that, I'm gonna go ahead and clear my terminal for a second here, and I'm gonna run ufw allow 80. That's gonna enable port 80, and I'm gonna do port 443. So ufw allow 443. That's going to enable the SSL port. Then we need to reload for these changes to be available on the web server. So we're gonna do ufw reload, and then we're gonna run ufw status to make sure that the changes were made and these ports are actually active in the server. And as we can see, now we have port 80 and port 443 enabled. Another way to test that out, you can copy the server IP address and you can paste it on your web browser. And if you get a message similar to this, it means that everything should be working as expected. With that done, we can now move on to the next step. So our next step here is setting up InternHub already. So to do that, we're gonna go ahead and clone our repo into our HTML directory, which is gonna be our nginx root directory. And that's gonna be located at the var directory, then www, then HTML. Also, let's go ahead and check on this because effectively sometimes these directories are not empty. They might contain an index.php or index.html file. So you want to go ahead and get rid of that. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to check on it again. This time it's empty. And I'm going to git clone this whole repo into the current directory. To do that, after git, you do space dot, and that's going to bring everything down exactly to this directory. Now that we have done cloning this, I'm gonna do an ls command again. Now we see that we have all the information that we have downloaded into our repo. And because I did the .git space dot, I don't have to cd into InternHub folder anymore. So we can totally skip the second step. If you didn't do the .git space dot, then you're gonna have to move into the project directory using the cd InternHub command. So you are actually able to be into that directory. And we actually need to do that because in order for us to install dependencies and to create the .env file, the environment file, we have to be inside the project directory. So, and that's what we're gonna do next. We're gonna copy our environment example file into a .env file that's gonna create the .env file for us. We're gonna go ahead and install all the PHP dependencies. I'm gonna get a little notification here saying, hey, do you really wanna run this as root? And I'm gonna say yes, because I'm actually running this as root. However, this is not recommended. For most cases, if you're running a production web server, you wanna actually create a specific user for your web server, totally separate from your root user. And there's plenty of documentation out there how to do that, so I'm not gonna go over the steps on doing that. I'm just gonna say yes for the purposes of this demonstration, and I'm gonna have all my packages installed. After all my PHP dependencies are installed, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna install all the Node.js dependencies. On step 6, we actually have to generate the encryption key. This key is gonna be used to encrypt files, encrypt communications, to encrypt all your users' passwords, and whatever else you would like to encrypt. And you can find this key after it's generated on your .env file. So to generate your key, you can do php artisan key column generate. And now we have our application key fully generated. I'm gonna clear my terminal again just to keep it clean. Next step, we're gonna go ahead and actually create our database. To do that, we have to first sign into our database server. In this particular case, I have my database server on the same server that I have my web server. So that was a little bit of a mouthful, but it's the way it's working right now. Just gonna copy and paste this. There's no password by default on the Ubuntu MySQL server, so I'm gonna just hit enter. And now, as you can see, I'm under my SQL terminal. So these commands right here are the ones that are gonna create your database user and such. But you shouldn't just paste this into your terminal as is. So I'm just gonna copy this. I'm gonna create a new document here. I'm gonna paste it, and I'm going to actually do some changes to this script. So I'm gonna change whatever it says your password. I'm gonna put my password, and I'm gonna copy this password, and I'm gonna put it here as well. These are just placeholders that we need to fill in with our own information. You can also change the database name. You can change the username. Just make sure you remember that, because you're gonna need that for the next step. So after I'm done creating this, I'm just gonna copy it. I paste the whole thing here, hit enter, and that's it. I have just created the database. I created the user. I have linked my database user to my database. I have assigned all the privileges needed for the user to manage a database. I have flushed all the privileges from my user in the database admin side, and I have exited the MySQL database. As you can see here on the left, all these queries ran okay, meaning that there was no errors. So if you get query okay on all these commands, it means that the database was successfully created. Our next step is going to be connecting the database to our Laravel application. So to do that, the process is actually very simple. We have to go to our environment file that we created in the previous steps. So I'm gonna use my favorite tool here, Nano. And I'm gonna open that file. And then what I want to do is go to the database connection. So DB connection is gonna stay as is, MySQL, because that's what we use in this case. The database host, On this particular case, since we're hosting the database in the same server, we're gonna keep it as is. But if you have a separate server for your database server, you will put the address for that server on this specific line. Then down here, if you have a custom port, you should enter that here. I'm gonna leave it as is for the purposes of this video. The database, we're gonna change. For our database, we actually used InternHub. I'm gonna go ahead and copy that, paste it in here. The user that we created is also called InternHub. You usually want to name that something else. And here on the password, since we use special characters, you always want to put double quotes or single quotes. Either way will work. But when you have special characters, you should always use them because it may or may not work depending on your particular case. Okay, so now the database supposedly is connected. I'm gonna go ahead and save, exit that. And we're gonna actually go ahead and try and see if it's connected. To do that, I'm gonna run this command right here, php artisan migrate. What this first part of the command is gonna do is that it's gonna populate the database with all the tables that are gonna be needed for the application to run. And after that, we're gonna run php artisan db column seed. What this is going to do on this particular case is it's gonna populate a list of categories into the database that are gonna be used later for either creating opportunities or for students to subscribe to opportunities. But this command in reality is used generally to like preload information into a database. So I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this whole thing so we can run them all at once. And let's see what we come up with. All right, we see that all the migrations were successfully run and we were able to seed the database as well. So those are great news. It means that the application should be up and running as of right now. However, we are still missing some stuff. We need to change file system permissions for it to be able to be properly read by the Nginx www-data username and group. We also want to create a proper entry into the Nginx server so that it's properly readable from the internet, because right now it might not be. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna go ahead and generate different assets then. To do that, you simply run npm run build, and that should take care of that. It's valid to mention, if you're just testing this or if you're developing on top of the application, you can run npm run dev instead. And what that will do is that will run a live server that is going to compile in real time any change that you make to a frontend. So if whatever frontend file that you change, immediately it's gonna recompile all those files and you're gonna be able to see the changes immediately on your end. Moving forward, we have to actually fix all the permissions for all the files contained in this directory. So to do that, I'm gonna just go ahead and copy all this, paste it in. That should take care of that. And now we're gonna go ahead and create our Nginx file. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy this. I paste it in here. I'm gonna change the name of this file. This file is gonna actually be called InternHub. And this is an empty file by default, right? So I'm just gonna go ahead and copy all this. I'm gonna paste it in here. And then I'm gonna change a couple of things. So on the server name, since we don't have a domain for these particular applications, I'm just gonna use the IP address. Then for the root directory, I'm gonna use our actual root directory, which is gonna be var-www/html/public. You always wanna do /public with Laravel applications because this is the folder that should be exposed to the web server. And what that will do is that it will get all the files that you need and it will compile them at the runtime. And that's going to allow you to see everything you need to see without actually exposing sensitive information such as the configuration files, the environment files, and other things. That makes sure that you keep protected all those important files from people that might try to steal your information from the web. I'm gonna go ahead and save this. Let me actually do something really quick here. I'm gonna try and see which version of PHP we're using. And we're using PHP 8.1. So the reason why you wanna check always that is because we're actually using PHP FPM, which is a PHP runtime. And if you're using PHP 8.0, 8.2, 7.4, 7.3, you should always use the same version that you're using on this line. If you're using 8.0, you just change this by 8.0. Otherwise, it's not gonna work at all. You might have an error on the web server when you're trying to run it with a different version of PHP because it simply doesn't exist. So I'm not gonna save this. I'm just gonna leave it as is. And then on the next step, we have to actually link that to the enable sites. So I'm gonna delete this from here. It's not called VoiceBiz, it's called InternHub. And I'm also going to remove the default site, which is the one that we saw previously, showing welcome to Nginx and such. I'm gonna delete that. We don't need that. I'm gonna go ahead and restart the Nginx server. And if we don't have any errors, it means that it is working, and we didn't have any errors. So we're gonna go ahead and test that out once more. And here we have it. There's some other things that you could do. Like for instance, you should be able to uh, install a certificate. You should be able to connect to all the daily digest and email configurations and all that. But for the purposes of this video, uh, this is up to the point that we're actually gonna get to install our lot of application, make InternHub work. This is a public dashboard that students are gonna see. Then also companies can register here through this form, and they can post opportunities for the students to apply for and whatnot. But we're gonna actually be seeing that on a different video. This is it for now. Thank you for watching. I hope it was entertaining and useful. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.